This is Healing of a Nation. My name is Eric Goepel, founder of the Veterans Cannabis Coalition. With me today is Brian Buckley, the founder and CEO of Hellman Valley Growers Company. But first, a quick word from our sponsor.
Shady Creek Trading Company produces and distributes cannabis-infused wild meat jerky products. Co-created by Settlers Jerky founder, Shady Creek Trading Company is an infused jerky products and distribution corporation located in Nevada City, California. Nomad Jerky Bites is their premier product, a packaged pouch with hearty bites of ethically raised buffalo fortified with THC. Shady Creek Trading Company are the innovators of the infused meat jerky market. They are compliant by all FDA standards and use cured strips of real buffalo as opposed to pressed jerky. To learn more about Shady Creek and their current investment opportunity, please visit the Wrazel investment marketplace at wrazel.com.
Brian Buckley is the founder and CEO of Helmland Valley Growers Company, a licensed cannabis operator in the state of California, but a company with an explicit social mission that is rooted in your own personal history that I think the people would be very interested in learning more about.
Yeah, absolutely. We look at Helmland Valley Growers Company. It is a for-profit, but we kind of say the term is a for-purpose. It's something bigger than any of us, what we're doing. And really where the genesis of this came from was just through deployments and seeing what was going on with veterans. Myself being a 100% disabled veteran, we kind of understand what the limitations the VA has. I mean, they're doing great work and they're doing the best with the tools they have, but I don't think they have all the appropriate equipment to help benefit our veterans. So really, it kind of started off with Andy Myers, who's our chief cultivator. I mean, he was a Marine Raider with myself. People don't know Marine Raiders is a special operation component the Marine Corps provides to the United States SOCOM. And while we were talking one day, I mean, he just looked really good and refreshed. And I'm like, what's going on? And he goes, all right, I gave up a fifth jack for a joint. And we're kind of like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you know, the big thing is, remember what happened the night before. I'm not drinking and driving. He's like, I'm feeling good in the morning. I'm feeling refreshed. And he's like, and it's really helping me make my transition from a warrior to a gardener. So we were thinking maybe there's something here. And we're like, well, let's not just be a veteran organization that says, hey, go smoke some cannabis is going to help you out. That's great. And I love the organizations that do that. But we're like, maybe we can make some impact here on a higher level. So we had the opportunity to meet some members of Congress and basically said, what would you guys need? And they're like, to make this conversation more impactful, you need data and you need American doctors. Had no idea how we're going to do it, but we're like, okay, and we kind of walked off. I always tell people, never make a comfort-based decision. Like if you wake up early and you don't want to go to the gym and you go back to bed, that's a comfort-based decision, right?
Right.
So I'm running around Los Angeles one day and I'm just trying to raise capital. I'm like, oh, this is just killing me. And my bed is like sounding really good. Well, Dr. Jeffrey Chen out of UCLA invited me to a cannabis symposium, and I'm just like, you know, man, just suck it up and go. And I went there and it was great. It was really impactful to learn. But I'm just out in the hallway getting some coffee, and this guy named Alon Blat walks up to me, and he runs an organization called Niamedic that's based out of Israel that does cannabis research. Just came over to the United States here in about 2017, and they're in Los Angeles and Orange County. And I kind of pitched what we were trying to do and how could I put this together. He goes, well, this is what we do. We do cannabis research. And it kind of just started building from there. To the point that, you know, with our nonprofit, we'll be a sponsor of the first institutional review board that should be approved here by August. And we're going to go after the symptoms of post-traumatic stress utilizing medical cannabis. And it'll be one of the first of its kind that a private company has done this. We're not going to be dealing with stuff out of NIDA. It's going to be our own stuff and kind of go from there. And there will be about 3 phases. This first one will be exploratory with 60 veterans, kind of understand what's working best for the veterans there. We'll go back, grow, come back out, do another study with about 200 veterans. This will be through tinctures. And then once that hits and we have a good understanding where we are, we're going to move it into either Michigan or Oklahoma and do what they call a retrospective, just have all the same genetics, everything come over, and just confirm what we found here in California. And then at that point, that's when we kind of have the solution and we're ready to, you know, go back in front of Congress, raise the right hands and say, here's the data, here's your American doctors, and God willing, get up into the VA medical system, hence making medical cannabis federally legal for all the patients here.
Yeah, I mean, and you brought up a lot of good points, and I think maybe some things that probably needs a little clarification. Mm-hmm. So NIDA, which you mentioned, the National Institute for Drug Abuse, they basically control the nation's supply of research cannabis, which is grown under contract by the University of Mississippi. So if you're a researcher in the United States and you want to study cannabis, you need a special license from the Drug Enforcement Administration, and then you need basically NIDA to approve the cannabis material for your study, and then they send that to you.
Yeah.
Now, the cannabis material that for research that is grown by the University of Mississippi under this contract with NIDA is nothing like what is available currently in legal and medicinal states. Most of the concentration of the active THC and CBD, the two major active compounds in the cannabis plant, I think in most NIDA formulations is, and they're almost always in like a cigarette form.
Yeah.
Right. So you're talking 4 to 5% THC and CBD in these tests in this cannabis material, which is not the kind of potency that is either available to most consumers or patients, nor what I think most clinicians would recommend, especially if you're trying to treat either chronic or acute conditions. I mean, that's such a low concentration in such an what would you call it? An inefficient consumption form, inhalation of combusted plant material, right? Like you're losing, I mean, I've seen anywhere between like 30 to 70% of the actual cannabinoid material or cannabinoids are lost in the combusting process, and so it's just not a very efficient way to do things. And that's unfortunately been a major issue with cannabis research in this country, is that it's been so restricted and so many arbitrary restrictions that these studies are almost set up to fail.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you're not using the appropriate material and the appropriate ingestion method, based on our current understanding of how cannabinoids are best absorbed in the body,
then all of a sudden, all 2 points,
right? Then all of a sudden, you can produce studies that show, cannabis doesn't do what everyone says it does. Well, obviously, anecdotally in the veteran community, we understand because we've seen firsthand people literally change their lives.
Yeah.
I don't know. We've spoken in the Veterans Cannabis Coalition over the last few years, thousands of veterans, who have used cannabis to treat everything from, PTSD, complications from like traumatic brain injuries to, anxiety and depression to, arthritic pain. It's such a huge range of potential applications, right?
Tremendously.
And that's why research is so important.
Yes.
Because you're never going to find any of this out if you're not approaching it in an organized and, I think, coherent way. So,
absolutely.
So going back to, the kind of research that Hvgc is going to be funding through, the sale of cannabis products in California. Why PTSD? I know PTSD is obviously, it occurs in up to, depending on the generation you're looking at, up to maybe 20% of veterans. So it's very prevalent in the veteran community, but it's very complex, and it's not well treated by current pharmaceuticals. Yeah. So, why would cannabis be any different?
That's a great point. And, the reason why we went after post-traumatic stress, or I would say more or less specifically the symptoms, is because there's so many symptoms of post-traumatic stress where we can kind of encompass that. So we're going to be looking at anxiety and pain and sleep and so on and so forth that all accumulate what post-traumatic stress is for anyone, not just people who served in the military. So that's where we found it a little bit more interesting to go there. And I'll just say, quite honestly, just from personal experience. I mean, I have 100% PTS from the VA. By me using medical cannabis, I mean, at nighttime, especially, God, trying to do a startup. I mean, it's like, you got to turn the noise down eventually. So, for me, it was just what I had to do. It was just kind of shut down the white noise, kind of put me on a euphoric state, kind of relaxed, was able to calm down, have a great night's sleep, which is very important, and then get up in the morning and just be very functional and feel good. And to me, it's just part of my daily routine. Sure. It's just like anything.
Well, it's a medicine.
Yeah, it's a medicine. I get up in the morning, I basically eat a salad through a blender. I mean, that's part of my routine, and I kind of go through that and just try and live a healthier life. And, I thought it was a really impactful story. It's been such an amazing journey being with Helmland Valley, and we're really getting well received. And, I'm on LinkedIn. I started connecting with friends from college I played college football with 20 years ago. And a buddy who's in Florida, and, one of his children came down with an illness, and she's going to be fine, great. But he's like, I'm a very talkative guy. And he's like, I tried cannabis once in college, and it just couch locked me. And he goes, I hated it. But he's like, now I'm like thinking about what I'm doing with my daughter and helping this out. We're raising money. And he's like, I can't sleep. And he's like, drinking every night wasn't great. And he's like, I literally had friends come over and they're like, just sit down here. This is called sativa. This will probably be more your lane. And he goes, bro, he's like, 2 hits of that. He's like, it's the best thing ever. He's like, I'm getting sleep. He goes, and that's why he reached out to me. He goes, I think it's so cool what you're doing with human trials and research. And he goes, like, I wanted nothing to do with this stuff. And he's like, I literally tried it 6 months ago and it's changed my life in a very positive way. I'm like, bingo, there you go. And I'm like, we all know that. We just got to show the numbers now. And that's when they cannot, it's like numbers do not lie. And having an institutional review board, having medical bless off, we're clear for human trials, having American doctors working side and side with our Israeli partners, I just think it could be a really magical and impactful thing. I mean, every day we're learning some new stuff. I mean, the Israelis are looking at when their vets are hit by an IED over there. Giving them medical cannabis right away is one of the best things they can do. It starts brain swelling, reduces it, starts the healing process, and it's helping out like combating post-traumatic stress. I mean, I remember when I got shot in Afghanistan and I'm on the helo going back for surgery. They gave me ketamine. And part of the reason was they're like, we like to do that because obviously it helps out with the pain and everything, but it essentially blacks you out a little bit.
So it's a very powerful dissociative.
And not really remember what is happening. And we think that can help. So that's where I just think, we were talking, just going totally crazy. Just like your corpsman or your medic had the narcs on them, why not just have a 1/4 gram of cannabis on them? And if something happens and you get hit by an IED, you're already done for 2 weeks. Let the healing process start. And maybe just give them a quick little vape pen and they just kind of start getting the process going. And there it is. And hopefully we can get there one day.
And I think I think you raise a great point, right? Like, and something that folks, might not consider when you're thinking about how this country treats veteran healthcare, which is the best healthcare is preventative healthcare, right? So instead of, trying to treat a veteran, 15, 20 years down the line after, things have started to come apart in their lives, which is often what, I think spurs a lot of vets to seek treatment, is, they're able to maintain for a long time, and then, life circumstances of some kind, take them off the rails, and then now they need treatment, but it's like they should have sought treatment 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's, there's a lot of reasons and good ones why veterans avoid the VA or private care, because so many, and, this is one reason why I am just recently started going to the VA is because I had heard for years that, like, if you go to the VA and you say you're dealing with depression and anxiety or, post-traumatic stress disorder or anything like that, you're going to get a cocktail of pills, right? And maybe, and don't get me wrong, there's access to, talk therapies and, like, non-pharmaceutical treatments and things like that. But let's be real, if there's tools I think that therapy can develop, but there's always going to be a need for some sort of therapeutic that can help with these things, right? The same, I think it's kind of the same idea behind using things like ketamine or MDMA in psychiatric settings, to try to essentially break people out of these sort of ruts of like depression and anxiety that form, I think, when folks are dealing with those conditions for a long period of time. So preventative medicine. You mentioned the Israeli protocol of, I think, using maybe I think it's a CBD nasal spray or something along those lines. For IDF soldiers who have been exposed to like blasts.
Yes.
Right, and that's a great. A great use of that tool because since 2003, the U.S. government at least has noted that has patented CBD under I think that patent is expired, but was patented CBD as a neuroprotectant and an antioxidant, which certainly makes sense in the use of an immediate like prophylactic or like therapeutic post blast.
Yes.
So and that's just one element of one cannabinoid in one setting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So really what we're looking at is, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, we know sort of anecdotally and maybe, through intuition and certainly through lived experience, like the potential, which is literally everywhere.
Yeah.
There's potential everywhere. So, looking ahead now, once, we're, more clinical trials, more human trials are always necessary. But, what would you like to see, I think, ultimately, what kind of healthcare or access to cannabis medicine would you want to see in the VA or more broadly?
It's funny because like when I'll talk with people and they're like, well, one day you might just have cannabis available in a CVS, and I'm like, that would be amazing. I would love to see a veteran walk in with their script and be like, here you go, and they're like, here's half a gram, see you next week, whatever. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. Just treat it like it's regular medicine. And what I find exciting is, you're seeing the UC schools starting to jump on, and they're going to start doing research. They will be doing with NIDA. Just reading about University of Pennsylvania, they're looking for private groups out in Pennsylvania to start doing some stuff. But the more research and the more of us saying, hey, it works, I think that will speed things up here quite quick. And, there's going to be a tremendous amount of opportunity, just not on the health side, but you look on the economic side for more jobs for people and to help out and get this going. I just think the potential is unlimited, and I think it would really make a huge impact. To your point, we don't have to have a VA cocktail. I mean, how many times you're in there and they're like, well, let's try this on you. Well, let's try that on you. You're like, what am I? And so
these last 3 benzodiazepines.
Yeah, but here you go. So it's like enough. We already see it. It's like the definition of insanity. I mean, we keep doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for different results. Well, hopefully people can open their eyes up a little bit more and kind of understand what we're doing. And again, that's why we just come in with hard data, and it's like bang, bang, bang. You can't ignore it, and let's just make this happen.
Talking about going back to veteran health in general, I always try to make the connection between between pharmaceutical use and suicide and overdose, because it is one of the few elements that is not really publicly hit on, I think, by elected officials, but which is very apparent to almost any veteran I think you would speak to, which is, did this did you, what issues were you dealing with? What medicines were you prescribed? How did those make you feel? Better or worse?
Yep.
Okay. In most cases, it's worse. Now, how worse? And sometimes, in some cases, it's worse to the point of, suicidal ideation, suicidal attempts, accidental, non-fatal overdoses, and then for, in other cases of about 65 to 7,000 veterans a year at least, who have completed, a suicidal act. So, but we'll talk about everything else, but we won't talk about pharmaceutical use.
Yeah.
To me, that's been one of the biggest obstacles to overcome, is connecting that dot in people's minds between, you can't put people on this indefinitely and expect things to get better. No. Because that's not how these drugs
they're instant gratification. I mean, you get an instant pop, you feel good, but then the problems start happening.
Right. Whether it's an antidepressant that modulates how your brain processes serotonin or anything else like that. You're changing pretty significant bodily processes in using a synthetic drug.
Yes. Right.
That has research behind it, but almost all the research, especially in like psychiatric drugs, they tend to be 6 weeks to a year, right? That's the length of study in a lot of these trials, and for a drug to get approved by the FDA, they only need 2 trials of significance to show that the drug is relatively safe and does something, right? And does that somewhat consistently. That's such a low bar when you think about it. Yeah. And we know that cannabis could definitely, surpass that very minimal threshold, and yet. Yeah. Right, here we are, 2020. Yeah. And we're still looking at, trying to get basic human clinical trials going in this country. Yeah. So,
the Wicked Root's mission is to unlock the healing power of cannabis and create trusted, safe, and highly effective wellness products. They firmly believe that cannabinoids and terpenes found in cannabis and hemp have the potential to positively impact millions of lives, and their team is dedicated to making this a reality. Utilizing proprietary DNA, the Wicked Root offers a brand of pharmaceutical-grade CBD products people can rely on. The Wicked Root team utilizes a full-spectrum CBD base infused with select terpenes to create optimal, science-backed formulas that are consistent and deliver targeted effects. To learn more about the Wicked Root, visit thewickedroot.com, or for more on their current investment opportunity, find Wicked Root in the Wrazel investment marketplace at wrazel.com.
I guess, more broadly, what if you had a message that you could deliver to voters in Congress right now, what would it be in regards to why is this such an important issue?
I think the big thing that people have to realize is listen to the people on the ground. Listen to the ones who are living it. Don't listen to politicians. I mean, I always say if politicians starts getting involved, it gets kind of weird, and and they have different motivations, all that stuff. Go out and talk to veterans. Tell them what's going on. What do you need? And listen to us. I mean, we're not just doing this because, hey, it's cool. It's cannabis. It's a green rush. I mean, I had nothing to do with cannabis until about 2016. I mean, it just wasn't what I did, the way I live. But now, you have to be a critical thinker, have an open mind. And like I said, again, we keep looking at what's going on and we keep giving these pills and we keep getting the same results. Maybe there's something alternative. And
Right.
we're finding it, and say from personal use, it works. I mean, I know it does. Why this mission is bigger than any one of us. It's going to help save future lives and do amazing things. I really believe you save one life, you save a million, and I think there's a lot of great things that we can do here. And at the end of the day, these men and women went forward to fight for our freedoms. Now it's our turn to fight for the life that they fought so hard to defend for us.
You know, and I always love to point out that, you know, there's a veteran in every community, right? Like, veterans are, you know, perhaps the most intersectional population in the United States, because it's a status that anyone can earn, essentially, if you're physically able to and willing to enlist.
Yes. Yep.
So, you know, and in that experience, and the fact that it's, you know, fathers and mothers, it's, you know, people as young as 22 to, you know, as old as, you know, 100 plus, who are all in this same demographic, who across generations are using cannabis. To the tune of, you know, based on surveys from the American Legion and Iraq and Afghanistan's of America, you know, more than 20% of veterans self-report using cannabis, which is more than double what the general population usage of cannabis is, which should tell you something unto itself, right? Like, why are so many veterans not necessarily thought of to be as the most, you know, illicit drug-friendly group? Let's just put it that way. Why have so many vets turned to cannabis? Because it works.
Period.
You know, and it works like almost nothing else. Which seems kind of like hyperbole when you say it, right? But yet, if, you know, I know vets, you know, and I'm sure you do as well, right, who have gotten down to essentially no medications. They, you know, stopped drinking. You know, a lot of them, you know, if they use tobacco, they stopped using tobacco. And now it's cannabis. And that's it. Right? And it's like, well, if we could just substitute alcohol and tobacco use in the veteran community, we would save thousands of veterans every year just off of that.
No, that's
not
a
even
great
touching the medicinal benefits.
You know what's, you just sparked something too, because we just did a podcast with a good friend of mine, Charles Dimmery, and Charles played 12 years in the NFL.
Right.
You know,
hell in the body.
Yeah, grew up in Oceanside. You know, he basically wasn't one of these guys like a football nut. He could just run a 4.340. He's like, okay, UNLV's like, here's a scholarship. He's like, sounds cool. And he's like, then I get drafted by the Atlanta Falcons. And he goes, and here I am playing the NFL. But he's like, listen, if I would have known then what I know now, like after 2 concussions, he's like, I would have walked away. He's like, we just didn't know. And you know, Charles probably weighed $185 out there, and there's very large human beings who are very fast and strong. But we were talking about his cannabis usage, and he goes, I used cannabis my entire NFL career, and he goes, and about 70% of my friends did as well. And he's like, we literally, after the game, we would go to someone's house who, you know, didn't have kids. We would sit there, we'd do whatever we had to do. Maybe we'd go out to the club. He's like, I might have had 2 drinks at the club. And he came back, and, you know, as we were talking about this, and we were talking about the brain and how much it just kind of eased his body, and he didn't have to take all the pills and all that. But I'm like, you played 12 years in the NFL. And I'm like, you know, if you make it like 5 years, you're on a pension. I mean, and you're like an OG at that point. It's like 12 years. That's 2 decades we were there. I'm like, do you think cannabis might have helped heal your body a little bit more versus doing other things like drinking the alcohol and doing that? He goes, I think that's a very good point. And I mean, it's just like, you think about it, so it's just maybe a healthier lifestyle overall. I mean, everything you just described, no drinking, no tobacco, this, that. Yeah, fine. You go home, you take a couple hits, however you want to take your medicine.
Right.
And you get up and you re-attack the next day, and it's all good. What's the difference between that and a martini? I mean, I don't get it.
Right. I mean, and this is the reality, right? Like, yes, people use cannabis for a variety of reasons, right? But whether their intent is to relax or their intent is to heal themselves, they're still getting a medicinal benefit, right? And they're getting it at such a minimal risk as well, right? Compared to so many other things that would fill that role that, you know, carry a lot more danger associated with it, especially for chronic or long-term use. You know, so that would be fascinating, right? And like you would, and I think that would be a great argument, more so than anything else, which is like, hey, you know, I'd hate to, you know, break it down into dollars and cents here, but you know, your players are going to last longer. They're going to have less severe injuries in the end. And, you know, I'm not necessarily advocating for, you know, for football or anything like this, but I'm just saying for professional sports in general. Right. Even ones that don't have a lot of contact or like high, you know, prevalence of like brain injuries. Even you're just talking like skeletal muscular injuries like NBA or, you know, horrendous, you know, like knee, hip, shoulder injuries, right? Like all of those things. You know, I know people, I'm sure you do as well, right, who use cannabis to treat the pain or inflammation associated with those injuries as well. That cannabis enables them, you know, cannabis is an enabler, right? it's not so much that it's a silver bullet or magic cure, but it enables you to do things that you used to be able to do that you now found yourself unable to do, either because of your injury or because of the drugs you were taking to treat your injury.
Absolutely.
And in that, I think people rediscover all sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
They find, they rediscover hobbies and other pursuits that, add some sort of enrichment or fulfillment to their lives. And in that, right, like to your point, you start to live a healthier lifestyle overall, right? So it's a very powerful balancer, I think, for a lot of people. So, who would not benefit more than professional athletes who are just taking their bodies to the limit?
And like I said, that might be something that, sometimes I think people have a hard time comprehending what people do in the military and just kind of why they go off and do it. But, everyone looks at athletes and everyone watches sports.
Right.
And, I bring up another example that kind of had a pretty positive impact in the Philadelphia area where I'm from. We had a guy named Chris Long who just recently retired, and he wrote next day on Twitter, he goes, guess what? I used the devil lettuce the entire time. And he was talking about his cannabis use. And like people were like, well, and I'm like, well, you saw him every Sunday doing what he did. He wasn't like some doper or some guy just sitting on the couch. He was one of the best people in the world doing what he did. And medical cannabis helped him. I'm like, so you tell me what's the difference between anything else he would have took? That's fine, but since he used that, and they're like, it's a really good point. I'm like, so I think people are starting to kind of come around, and you even see like the NBA and the NFL, they're kind of laxing their stuff. And like I said,
moves,
maybe we got there with the veteran side, and maybe the military goes, well, it's working for the vets. Why don't we look at our active duty people? It's slowly just kind of got to get there. And like I said, just winning hearts and mind, improving it. And I think, it'll be interesting to see where we are in 20 years.
Right. Well, I'm kind of excited. I mean, I'm part of this movement because I think this is like we're within a few years of federal legalization.
Yes.
I mean, I thought we were going to be a little closer by now, but here we are.
Yeah, I remember like 5 years ago, everyone was like 5 years. So it was like that's what everyone kept saying. And you're like, all right. And I was like, man, it's like 6 years now, but okay.
I know. Well, I mean, it goes to show that it's like, even though there's overwhelming public support for this, right? 92%, Pew and Gallup have been polling this issue for like 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
Right. And it started like, 80% disapprove. 3%, are in favor, and now it's just the lines crossed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now we have overwhelming support, but there hasn't turned into any political momentum. But I mean, which is one of the reasons why I think you and I are both on the same sheet of music when it comes to putting veterans out front on this issue because they,
it's apolitical. I mean, you have a DNR, you can't really punch holes at a vet,
Right,
so.
And it's really hard to look a vet in the face and sort of discount or dismiss their lived experience.
Exactly.
Right, especially when you're talking about something as personal as the injuries they sustain in service and the challenges that they faced afterward with dealing with that.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we'll bring it to a close here, and I guess but I'd love to let people know how they can find if they're in California, how they can find HVGC products.
Absolutely.
And if they'd like to support Battle Brothers Foundation or the ongoing work that HVGC is doing.
No, it's tremendous. Yeah, go to hvgcompany.com. That'll go right to our website. You can look where to find us, and it'll show you where we are throughout the state. And then also there you'll see a link for Battle Brothers Foundation. Click on that. It'll take you to our Battle Brothers website. And please, all the donations help. And like I said, we're doing our part with every product we sell from Hellman Valley Growers Company. 100% of our profits goes back to veteran medical cannabis research. So again, like I said, this is a for-purpose company, one with a soul, and something that we can hope solve a problem here in the United States. So appreciate the platform and to talk about this. Well,
it's a veteran who, I think veterans are great at identifying problems, creating solutions, and then just pounding it.
Yeah, well,
until something moves.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was running into a wall for about 4 years, but damn it, it happened.
Well, I mean, perseverance is key in all this.
Yes.
So thank you, Brian.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you again. This is Healing of a Nation. My name is Eric Goepel.